ought to be in pictures. You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Deep Dive Movie Reviews. I'm Steve Hackman along with my friend James Marsh. And today we are going to continue our Top 5 series. And to celebrate the release of the forthcoming new Top Gun movie with Tom Cruise, we decided to do the top 5 films of Tom Cruise. James, are you ready for this? You ready to get into this?
No, I'm not ready at all. I think this was incredibly painful. We haven't conferred at all about what we're going to pick. Personally, I found it very, very difficult to narrow my choices down to 5, but I have, and I'm ready. And I think what we've agreed to do is we're not going to rank these. Instead, we're going to work through his career chronologically from his early days right to Top Gun Maverick. And as and when we have a new entry each, we will address them accordingly.
Yeah,
and go from there and see how it goes.
I've got to say that, like you, James, this was hugely difficult. Tom Cruise, despite what anybody may have think about him personally, the guy has some amazing films, and so it was very difficult for me. So one of the things I've struggled with is, do I go for the quality films or the films that I actually enjoy and rewatch a lot? And that was my quandary. Like I'm thinking, okay, there's going to be some picks that I have that I know you're going to go, what? There's no way that film is better than this. And I would say, yeah, you're right. But I enjoy this one, and I rewatch this one as opposed to this higher quality Tom Cruise film that I never get around to rewatching.
Well, I think that's absolutely fine. I mean, I don't think there should really be any rules to this, or I don't think you should be held accountable to anybody, even me. These are it was simply pick 5 Tom Cruise films that you want to give a shout out to, that you want to celebrate. Now, whether these are your favorite, your most regularly watched, the ones where you think he gives the best performance, his sort of finest films, or whatever, that is entirely up to you. I mean, you can just pick 5 Mission Impossible movies if you want, and we all know which one you'd leave out. But it's
absolutely. I don't think we've conferred on this. I don't think we haven't conferred on this, but I know exactly the Mission Impossible movie that is not like the others.
And that's fine. And I think it's great that we haven't conferred. We haven't agreed upon a rationale behind any of this. We just thought, let's talk Tom Cruise. He's a bona fide movie star. He's perhaps the only one left, at a time where everything is IP driven, franchise driven, interconnected, universe driven. He pretty much stands alone as the only guy that you go see that movie because it's a Tom Cruise movie.
Yeah.
Rather than it being Top Gun, Mission Impossible, or what have you, which is the way it used to be. And I can't think of anybody else who wields that kind of star power in Hollywood today.
I couldn't argue with that. He is probably the biggest star, still is. So let's get into this. How do you said you want to start from the beginning?
Did you want to do a subscription shout out before we get started? Or not bother?
Yeah, let's not bother. Let's give him a pass today. I'm ready to get into this.
That's fine.
Well, okay. I think I'm going to suggest, James, that I have the earliest pick. Because unless you've picked Endless Love in 1981, my first, and I'm going to guess that you didn't, my first is Taps, the 1981 film, which was his second theatrical film, but it was Sean Penn's first. It has George C. Scott. It has Timothy Hutton, who was nominated, I believe, for a Golden Globe for his performance in this. And it's essentially about a group of military academy cadets who find out that their school is going to be closed, and it's going to be sold to real estate developers. And they subsequently take over the academy militarily and begin to negotiate for being able to maintain and keep the school open. And of course, it ends in tragic results, but it's just stellar performances by Tom Cruise, by Sean Penn, by Timothy Hutton, watching them at the beginning of their careers, watching these huge stars. All 3 of them will go on to become quite well known, obviously. Watching them at the beginning of their careers, acting together. And at this time, I was a cadet in Civil Air Patrol. So this was a huge movie for us because we understood this kind of military precision, even among teenagers. Because I remember we would go out into community events in our uniforms, and I'd be a 14-year-old calling the 17-year-old lieutenant, and yes, lieutenant, and people would freak out at this, but we totally got into it. And so whenever I watch this film, it kind of reminds me of my cadet days back when I was a teenager.
Wow. Well, I have to say that this is one of, I think, only 2 or 3 Tom Cruise movies I haven't seen.
Oh, goodness. Well,
yeah, it's been sitting on my watch list I think it's not Netflix. I think it's on Amazon or on Disney. It's on one of them, and I flagged it immediately. I was like, oh yeah, I have to watch that. I've been meaning to watch that forever.
Not only does it have George C. Scott, but it has Ronnie Cox in it too.
And, fantastic. Yeah, no, I just never got around to it, and I really, really, really should. So unfortunately I have nothing to add to this one. So all I can do is move on. Do you have anything else earlier than, let's say, Top Gun?
I do not.
Okay, well then my first pick is Top Gun. I can't not pick Top Gun. This was when Tom Cruise, absolutely solidified his status as a real movie star. It was the first film that saw him, or in which he was able to depict an adult, really, a very immature, hot-headed adult, but an adult nonetheless. Everything that came before that, he was either a high schooler or a university student, or a kid, quote unquote. Whereas here, as Maverick, Pete Maverick Mitchell, he's an adult. He's a romantic interest. He's a hot-headed flyboy. He goes toe-to-toe with all the other guys, and he emerges as the alpha male. And there's very little you need to say about Top Gun that hasn't already been said. Suffice to say that I've seen it more times than I've seen almost any other movie. It's a movie that we used to watch over and over and over and over and over again at school. We would quote it endlessly. We were kind of aware of the homoerotic undertones of it, but we didn't really, that didn't scare us away from it or anything like that when we were teenagers. We were just like, oh no, we're all in. This is fantastic. The soundtrack, I think it's the first time when I was aware of a movie soundtrack being a thing unto itself and being like a hit album and a hit record. It was the first soundtrack that I remember everybody had it on tape in their collection, and if you didn't, it was like, well, where's your copy? Where's your copy of Top Gun? And it's just a movie that has been in my bones since it came out, and probably always will be. I know it back to front, and I love it. And Tom Cruise is a huge part of that.
Perfect pick, James. I didn't pick it as one of my top 5, but I love Top Gun. I saw it at the cinema when it came out. And I still just remember watching those flight scenes and just being amazed. And I was about 19 at the time, and I was working at the cinema. I was an usher. And so we do these parties, and I'm embarrassed to say we would do the whole thing where the guys will sing "You Never Close Your Eyes." We would enact the whole thing at these parties. I look back now and I roll my eyes, but that was a thing back in those days. So
I believe you.
Yeah,
I believe you.
Good pick. Good pick.
I think I couldn't get past it. I was always like, well, that's a given, but I was like, nah, it's so much part of his identity that I couldn't get past it. So what's your next one? Do you have anything else in the 80s?
Moving on. Yes, I do. And I'm going to, and this is one that you're going to kind of roll your eyes at, but I love this film. I love Cocktail. I love. I was
like, which one might I roll my eyes at? That's the one I might roll my eyes at.
And I knew as soon as I picked this one, I thought, this over like movies like Valkyrie. When I was trying to justify myself earlier about quality film versus something I enjoy, to me, this actually gives that smirky, know-it-all, witty Tom Cruise, I think, even better than Top Gun. He is just a snappy, and watching him with Brian Brown, is it Brian? Brian Brown. Yeah. Doing the whole tricks with the liquor bottles. It's just fascinating, and I love the banter between those two. Their thoughts on life. It's just a business. It's a
Are they?
fun, witty film. And I find that as it gets towards the end, it loses steam for me because then it suddenly becomes serious. And I love the first half of the film where it's just him trying to make it big. He's behind the bar, just sharing witticisms all the time. And I love it. It's a fun film.
Yeah, I mean, it's a film. I think I struggled with it a little bit when I was younger because it is a little bit more serious. You know, it's a drama, it's a romance. Yeah. It's more about, you know, making something of yourself in the world from a business point of view that I was too young to really kind of connect.
It was very 80s. It had a very 80s, you know, you got to make it, you know, it was that vibe. It was Reagan America.
Absolutely. You know, and I was still a child in the 80s. You know, I turned 13 in 1990. So, you know, and I have since gone back to it and I think appreciated it more. You know, certainly Brian Brown's character, you know, he's great in it. And I think he really adds a bit of, dare I say, gravitas to it at a time when, you know, Tom Cruise's character is all about being slightly out of his depth and being a bit, you know, too overly ambitious.
Well, if Brian Brown had not been in that film, I wouldn't be mentioning that film right now because it's the chemistry between those two that really works for me.
As lovely as Elizabeth Shue is, you know.
And for me, that's the least interesting part of the film. No disrespect to Elizabeth Shue, but I love the banter of the boys behind the bar, and that's what
Fair enough.
That's what I'm into watching. Yeah.
I think at the time, Elizabeth Shue was probably the most interesting part of it to me at that age. But you know, but all that. But however, what I do remember is my biggest childhood connection to that film. For some reason, I bought Kokomo by the Beach Boys on 7-inch vinyl, you know, which was the official kind of song release from the film. And so I had that for a long time, and it has Tom Cruise on the front. It doesn't have the Beach Boys on the front. It has Tom Cruise, has Cocktail poster on the front. And I remember the B-side was Tutti Frutti by Little Richard.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. I have Kokomo on one of my playlists or a couple of my playlists. Great tune.
So I guess then my next pick is going to be my next pick because it's also from the 80s. I'm picking Oliver Stone's Born on the 4th of July.
Okay, yeah.
Now, for some reason, when I was this came out right at the time when I was first starting to sort of lock into movies as something more than just something to pass the time. Something, you know, when I was locking in on it actually being an interest of mine that I was going to pursue. And one of the first filmmakers that I latched onto was Oliver Stone. Platoon was a movie that we used to watch over and over and over at school as well. I don't know why. We didn't really go to like a military school or anything like that, and none of us were that minded that way. But for some reason, Top Gun and Platoon were two of the movies. I guess it's kind of that male bravado kind of thing is in both of them. It might be something like that, but those were two movies that we used to watch endlessly. And so I really kind of zeroed in on Oliver Stone's career, and then obviously when he did a movie with Tom Cruise, it was great. And I think it's the first time that you really see sort of what Tom Cruise was capable of. Yeah. You know, it was the first time. I mean, I do want to give a little shout out to Rain Man because I think he is the unsung hero of Rain Man. You know, he was completely overshadowed by Dustin Hoffman, but I think Tom Cruise is undeniably great in Rain Man. But in Born on the 4th of July, it's a big showy performance. You know, Vietnam veteran. He spends the second half of the movie most of the movie in a wheelchair, and it's just, you know, and it's all about the rough treatment that the American government and the country gave to its veterans who were returning and found themselves unloved and disrespected and all the rest of it. You know, so it's a real harrowing story, and it gave Tom Cruise the opportunity to show us what he was capable of, and I thought he was absolutely fantastic in it. He got his first Oscar nomination for the film, losing out to another wheelchair-bound role, Daniel Day-Lewis in My Left Foot, which you're like, okay, fair enough. If you're going to lose to anybody, lose to Daniel Day-Lewis. That's fair enough. But for me, it's a great movie, and it's beautifully shot. It's like all Oliver Stone movies. It's incredibly well edited, using all kinds of different sort of film stock, color, black and white, 16 mil, 35 mil. There are technical masterclasses, but this was Tom Cruise. Really, this was Tom Cruise showboating and proving really to the world, take me seriously. Yeah. You know, I've become a massive star, and I'm not going to take the easy route. You know, he's basically doing a sort of Robert Pattinson kind of thing. He's like, I'm a movie star, but I'm not going to make this easy for myself. I'm not going to do franchise stuff. I'm going to
Right.
pursue the interesting characters, interesting stories, interesting filmmakers. And I think this was that first big step in that direction. And it's a movie that I used to just watch over and over and over again. I'm not entirely sure why. I think it was just because I was so into Oliver Stone at the time. But it's a film I know backwards, and I don't. And it's a weird movie as a young teenager to be watching over and over and over again. This Vietnam veteran drama, but I did, and it's still great.
Interesting. I only saw that movie later because that time period was when I'd grown up, as I've shared before, as conservative, evangelical, Republican, Reagan era. And this was when
No wonder you like Cocktail.
When Rush Limbaugh was really going up through the stratosphere. We were all listening to Rush Limbaugh. Wow. I'm embarrassed to say now, but he blasted this movie when it came out. And so I didn't see it because, well, if Rush is just about a bunch of liberals and blah, 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 you know, subsequently
disrespecting the military.
That's it, you know, whatever he was saying back then, we listened to. And hindsight, I was able to finally see it years later and loved it. But yeah, that's my little anecdote of why I didn't see it initially. I was caught in middle America, red state land.
Wow. Well, very good of you to fess up to that. But yeah, if you haven't seen it lately, do go back and have another look. Yeah. If nothing else, for Willem Dafoe, who rolls in like towards the end of the movie and absolutely steals the show. He's insane as ever and brilliant.
Moving on, you know where I'm going to go because
I thought you probably would. Okay, so go for it.
Yeah, because it's one of my top 5 of all time. Yeah, 1992's A Few Good Men, obviously starring alongside Demi Moore and Jack Nicholson, based on the screenplay by Aaron Sorkin. I've mentioned this film numerous times before, so this is no surprise. I love this film. I love everything about this film. I've rewatched this movie. It's probably my top 10 most rewatched films. The dialogue, the acting. To me, even though, as you mentioned, Rain Man and Top Gun were really what were the platforms where Tom Cruise said, hey, I am now a big star. This is the film where, to me, he really came into his own. He knows who he is at this point, even though he's still able to play that young, you know, I'm still trying to live up to my father's standard. Yeah, it's interesting, both in Top Gun and in A Few Good Men, he plays this young guy who's trying to follow in the footsteps of a very famous father and is struggling with that. But I'm not going to say much more about this film because I really praised it in our top 10 films that we take on a deserted island. Not only is this one of my top 5 Tom Cruise films, did I say top 10? Top 5. Yeah, top 5. But it's also my top 5 films I would take on a deserted island.
So like Top Gun, it's the best of the best. Yeah, I mean, I think I agreed with you then, and I agree with you now. I kind of knew you were going to pick it, so I didn't.
But if I was ranking, this is the best Tom Cruise film.
Wow, I mean, it's a great movie. It's one of those movies that you can't really find a fault in. Yeah. It's endlessly entertaining, incredibly deep ensemble cast. You know, characters come on for 2 minutes and they just knock it out of the park. It's brilliant. You know, it's really, really good.
I mean, when Kevin Bacon's in a film and he's like number 6 on the list.
Oh, sure. You know, I mean, like the sort of the second tier of performers here. You've got like Kevin Bacon, Kiefer Sutherland, JT Walsh. You know, and you're just like, okay, wow, this is deep. This is Cuba Gooding Jr. Isn't it one of his first roles?
And Noah, the guy from ER, Noah. Is it Noah Watt? Wow.
Yeah,
he plays one of the guys who's in the witness stand.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like everybody in here is just a star or a star in the making. It's brilliant. Okay, so now we hit a pretty good run where he was sort of undeniably like the biggest star, and he was just making huge movie after huge movie. Any others in the 90s for you?
I'm gonna go with the first Mission Impossible.
Alrighty.
I love the Mission Impossible films. Obviously, I needed to pick one, and I thought, why not go with the first one? I thought it was great, and I'm curious, which of the Mission Impossibles do you think does not deserve? I'm going to go with number 2.
Yeah, number 2. It's terrible. I mean, it's John Woo. Yeah. It's John Woo, but it's terrible.
It's not even a Mission Impossible film. It's just Tom Cruise running around in slow motion. It's not a
Yeah,
team, So to me, the first Mission Impossible really set the tone of what was going to become a really exciting and entertaining franchise that continues to entertain to this day. It started nearly 25 years ago. And so, yes, Mission Impossible, the first one, because I've got to pick one. And it seemed like the best one.
Well, I'm going to just jump in now then, and ruin this chronology that we've done, and just say that I picked a Mission Impossible movie, but I picked the last one.
Okay.
I picked Mission Impossible Fallout, which is the last movie he did, so it would probably end up being right at the end. But it seems to make sense to talk about it now, just because I feel it's a great franchise. It's a franchise that it's really his only franchise. He did a sequel to Jack Reacher, but this is like his franchise, and he's really made it his own. And I think they're going, with the exception of part 2, they're going from strength to strength. And what he's doing now, since collaborating with Christopher McQuarrie on the last couple, is that they've kind of turned it into something else, where it is this bombastic stunt and action showcase, that kind of was reserved for James Bond movies.
Right. Yes.
I think the first Mission Impossible really taps into that kind of Cold War hangover, the cloak and dagger, tradecraft intrigue, whereas now he's just kind of jumping out of airplanes and stuff. But the fact that he's doing it all himself, I think he's become Ethan Hunt essentially in his career, where he's doing all of the stunts himself. Stunt drivers have said repeatedly, "Oh, well, Tom can do this better than we can, so we just let him do it." And it's become just such a sort of phenomenally successful franchise. And I think that it has, in terms of its aesthetics, in terms of its craft, they're just getting better and better and better and better. I think that last movie is such a masterclass in kind of tension and suspense and spectacle. I'm just in awe. And I know they're doing 7 and 8 now back to back. I cannot wait. I hope he doesn't kill himself, because he's going to be 62 by the time number 8 comes out, if on their current schedule. And a man of 62 should not be doing anything like that.
No. I could have easily picked Fallout as well. I love that film. Whether I picked the first one or the last one, it's good that we bookended it, because we have a mutual love for this franchise.
Oh, it's incredible, and it's synonymous with him. He's completely made it his own, and is living it in real life, which is insane. Yeah. But bravo, my hat's off to him. He's great.
Except for number 2.
except for number 2. Yeah, which has its fans, but it's just not a Mission Impossible movie. It's just ridiculous. Apparently they did it all pretty much without a script. And one interesting little fact about it is Dougray Scott, the villain, turned down being Wolverine to be the bad guy in Mission Impossible 2. Yeah.
Who would have guessed?
The beauty of hindsight. Yeah.
But in the multiverse, there is a version of Dougray Scott where he
wouldn't
did
that
take
be something?
And then
that would be a very knowing little
Hugh Jackman's pumping gas somewhere,
Yeah, watch this space. You might yet see that in a future MCU multiverse movie. That would be fun if Dougray Scott pops up as Wolverine. Okay, anyway, moving on now. We're through the 90s. Any other 90s movies from you?
No, I have to admit that Jerry Maguire was close.
Yeah.
It was very close for me. I love Jerry Maguire, but it didn't make my 5.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great run there. The Firm, Interview with the Vampire came kind of close for me. That's one of he's done a few films like this where he's been cast as a beloved character from literature, and everybody was up in arms about how terrible the choice was to cast Tom Cruise as this character. And then I dare say he proved them wrong by actually doing it really good. I really like Interview with the Vampire, but I didn't pick it. Jerry Maguire is seen as one of his great roles. It was his second Oscar nomination. I know you're a big rom-com fan,
yes,
which I imagine is why it came close. It's good, it's fine, but it's never been particularly special.
Actually, though, it's the rom-com elements of that film that really disqualified it for me. When he really gets into the Renee Zellweger relationship, it slows down for me. I love it's like Cocktail. I love the banter. When nobody does, well, I shouldn't say nobody. It'd be hard to beat Tom Cruise when it comes to banter. And when he's on, he's on. So whether it's Cocktail or Jerry Maguire, I love Tom Cruise being Tom Cruise.
So
Show
you
me
prefer
the money. Yeah.
I was gonna say you prefer the show me the money stuff rather than the you complete me stuff.
Absolutely. The whole you complete me stuff was like the kid was cute. He kind of made it for me, but it really slows down for me. I like, why do they have to bring a love interest into this? It was so interesting until.
Fair enough. I think the other one that came really close for me was Eyes Wide Shut.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I'm a huge Stanley Kubrick fan, and I think that there's a lot going on in that movie that I think it doesn't always get credit for. It's kind of labeled as a kind of bit of a misstep, obviously because it's him and Nicole Kidman in it, and they were a real couple at the time. But I think it's a really strong movie. But I moved straight on to Magnolia is my third pick. If I'm on third, I can't remember. I think I'm on kind of third or fourth now because I kind of tipped my hand and did Mission Impossible already. Anyway, Magnolia is my next pick. It's another sort of show-stopping performance from him in a big ensemble. It's Paul Thomas Anderson, who had just broken out with Boogie Nights, doing this really ambitious kind of ensemble, multi-storied, multi-stranded patchwork of a movie, as much about LA as it is about anything else, all about fate and chance and all of these incredibly sort of profound statements, and a huge top tier cast, but mainly character actors. You got like Philip Seymour Hoffman and Julianne Moore, John C. Reilly, before they were kind of really deemed big A-list stars, and then Tom Cruise is in there as well, and it was seen as a weird choice because he would kind of overshadow. And then he plays this absolutely repulsive character, this kind of love guru, TJ.
It's like a motivational speaker, wasn't he?
But of the worst kind of alt-right, incel, men's rights activist kind of type. I can't even quote his key phrases because they're so repellent. Just about taking charge and dominating any woman that you want and all the rest of it. And then obviously he has daddy issues again, and it builds to this sort of great moment where he breaks down on the bedside of his dying father. And this is the movie that Tom Cruise really should have won an Oscar for. He was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. I believe he lost out to Michael Caine for a very dubious performance in The Cider House Rules, in which he wasn't great. I'm sorry, he wasn't great. He had a very dodgy accent in it, and the film's not that good either. Sorry, it just isn't. Whereas Tom Cruise in Magnolia is, I think, the high point of his career in terms of actual acting, showing range, showing depth. It's a real powerhouse performance. And when you're in the company of those kind of performers, it takes some real. He could have embarrassed himself so easily. It could have been a huge gamble, but it pays off brilliantly. I think he's great, and I think the movie is great. I think everybody knows the movie is great, but
I don't like it.
Oh, do tell.
The thing is, I wish I could tell you more specifically, but I think I saw it about 20 years ago when it came out, and it was highly recommended by my boss at the time. And after watching it, I thought, well, there's 2 hours of my life I'm not getting back. And I just had this real negative response to it. I probably need to go back and give it another fair shake again. I do remember liking Tom Cruise's performance in it. I thought that was one of the highlights in it, although I didn't like the movie, and that's why it didn't even come close to being in my top 5.
Okay. Well, I mean, interesting. I would say go back and watch it again. I think Paul Thomas Anderson is a great filmmaker. I think with the exception of Licorice Pizza, which I was a bit lukewarm on, I think he's pretty much gone from strength to strength, and he's doing his own thing, working outside the system. Phantom Thread I thought was great. Inherent Vice was great. Obviously, There Will Be Blood was amazing. And I think this is where he's first showing signs of just an adeptness on a scale that we hadn't really seen from him before. Boogie Nights is fantastic, but it fit in too easily with the kind of Pulp Fictions and whatever that were coming out right then. Yeah. Check it out. I would urge you to go back and watch it again, because I think if only for Tom Cruise, because he's just amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Boy, now I'm almost wanting to change my mind again, because I'm seeing a couple of films coming up that I've got them written down. I've got my last one. I have one more to go, and I'm debating whether I.
You know what? I think what has been fascinating so far is we haven't both picked the same movie yet, have we?
No, we haven't.
Which I think is great.
Yeah.
And I don't mind if we kind of sneak in one or two extra ones, and this just turns into a full blown Tom Cruise retrospect. I say talk about whatever you want to talk about. If there's anything you want to highlight along the way, we can call it a top 5. But if it's just us fanboying over Tom Cruise for half an hour, that works too.
No, well, I think the next one then, if we're going into the early 2000s, my final one that I had written down was Minority Report, based on the Philip K. Dick short story and directed by Steven Spielberg. I think this is the only time Tom Cruise partnered with Steven Spielberg, if I'm correct there.
It was the first time. They did 2 in quick succession, because they did this and then War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds. Yes, you're right. That's right. I loved Minority Report. War of the Worlds was okay. Wouldn't make my top 5 list. But I've rewatched Minority Report a number of times. I love the premise of the story is incredible. It's, if you're not familiar with it, if listeners out there are not familiar with it, it takes place in the not too distant future, where they've been able to have these 3 precogs, they're called. There's 3 individuals who have the ability, when linked, to be able to see briefly the future. And because of this, in the Washington, D.C. area, there's no more murders anymore, because they have a whole police division assigned to stopping murders before they happen. And there's
the pre-crime.
The pre-crimes. And of course, it gets into the whole idea of, can somebody be guilty of a crime they haven't committed yet? And there's all kinds of existential and philosophical questions asked in this film, in and amongst the Tom Cruise running around doing his daring Tom Cruise stuff. The film goes much deeper, and I love that it has a very young Colin Farrell in there playing.
It does.
Yes, Colin Farrell, and he actually mentions in it that he is a graduate from Fuller Seminary, which is a theology school in Southern California that most people outside of my spheres wouldn't know. And I'm wondering, why did they throw that in? Why did the screenwriter throw in, I'm a graduate from Fuller Seminary? I thought, it's a little side note, not why I love the film, but whenever I watch it and he says that, I'm always thinking, who put that in there, and why did they put that in?
I guess why it's in is to ground him as a more traditional religious guy, because there are religious implications with these precogs in terms of
that's true.
Undermining traditional religious thinking. Because if you can predict the future, then that raises questions about that contradict.
And Fuller Seminary is known to be, it's not necessarily a liberal progressive theology school, but it's not a conservative one either. A lot of free thinkers come out of Fuller Seminary. It's a pretty balanced place by and large. And so anyhow, that's a sidetrack. Minority Report, that's my last pick of my top 5, and then I've got a couple more that I want to mention as we go through the years. Okay,
yeah, Minority Report is really cool. I like it a lot. There's some kind of ever so slight misstep at the end with the where they reveal who the killer is and how he was able to fool the precogs into thinking that they saw something. Which I'm a bit like, that for me, that doesn't quite work. But for 99% of the movie, I think it's incredibly cool. The aesthetic is incredibly cool. Steven Spielberg uses this kind of like washed out, steely sort of blue-gray color palette in the movie that just adds to the kind of sort of cyberpunk techno look of it. There's a great sequence where Tom Cruise has to get his eyeballs replaced.
Yes, that was amazing. And the spider creatures
with the spider scanners. There's some really cool tech stuff and really cool sci-fi stuff in there. Like you said, yes, it raises a lot of philosophical questions about, can you be guilty of something you haven't done yet? Which was also raised recently in Moon Knight. Ethan Hawke's character in Moon Knight, who's the villain in that, is motivated by ridding the world of people who we know are going to do bad things in the future. And it's like, no, you can't do that. Yeah, so I think it's great. It's certainly up there for me. And I think again, he's got another good run here where he goes. I mean, Vanilla Sky, I'm not too hot on. I got to be honest. I think I probably need to watch it again, but I'm not too hot on it. Last Samurai, I think gets a bad rap for its white savior narrative, but I think it's actually pretty well done.
Yeah, it's okay movie. I enjoy it. It's Collateral. I love him in Collateral.
Collateral's great. I think it's the first time he played a bad guy.
Yeah, and I think that's why this was on the short list of my top 5. It didn't make my top 5, but it was on my short list.
And then he started having a bit of fun. War of the Worlds, Mission Impossible 3, Lions for Lambs, Tropic Thunder, Valkyrie, Night and Day.
Valkyrie was a great movie. That was a really good film.
Valkyrie is a lot of fun. True story about a obviously bungled attempt to assassinate Hitler by senior German Nazi officers who were just like, hang on, the Führer's gone too far.
Yeah.
Great ensemble cast of not Germans.
They always get the Brits to play the Germans. Isn't Kenneth Branagh in that movie too? I think
Kenneth Branagh is in it. I think Eric, what's his name? Eddie Izzard is in there.
Oh yeah.
And he does that great thing, a bit like
Bill Nighy, Terrence Stamp, Tom Wilkinson. Yeah, they get all the Brits to play Germans.
Yeah, to play Nazis for sure. Yeah. And it does that great thing where it starts off in German, and then it kind of just zooms in to their mouth and fades into English, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess I understand German now.
And the actors are thinking, thank God I don't have to learn any more German lines.
Yeah, right. And then we come to the other Tom Cruise movie I've never seen. I've never seen Rock of Ages.
Oh, I have. It's a fun film. It's a good. It wouldn't be in my top 5, but you should watch it. It's a fun film.
Oh yeah, I should get to it just for completion's sake, if nothing else. After that, we get Jack Reacher. Now, Jack Reacher is the other big movie that, like Interview with a Vampire, he was cast as Jack Reacher, and everybody was up in arms, going, "That's not what Jack Reacher looks like." And having now read, I hadn't at the time, but having now read one Jack Reacher novel. Oh yeah, he's nothing like Jack Reacher. Jack Reacher is far more like the character in the recent TV show. Mm-hmm. He's a big hulking 6-foot-something young blonde guy. What I will say is that Jack Reacher is a really good movie. It's a really tough, edgy sort of action thriller with military undertones. I think Tom Cruise's first collaboration with Christopher McQuarrie, who obviously he would then go on to do the recent Mission Impossible movies with. And Werner Herzog plays the bad guy, a guy who escaped from a gulag by chewing off his own thumbs. It's a surprisingly kind of hard edge. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't actually.
That's the one I would say, go watch it. Give it the time, because it's a really kind of hard-nosed action thriller that pulls no punches. Okay, so I think it's my official last pick is Edge of Tomorrow.
I'm glad you picked it because it was on my short list. I love this film too, but it's your pick. Go for it.
So this is based on a Japanese novel called All You Need Is Kill, and should have been called Live, Die, Repeat, which was like the tagline for it. And everybody after the fact, even the distribution companies kind of realized too late, oh, that's a much better title. So you saw in the posters and certainly on the box art of the DVD or whatever, it had Live, Die, Repeat, and then in very small type at the bottom, Edge of Tomorrow. And but okay, so if for those of you who don't know, it's set in the near future. Earth is at war with an alien race who have invaded, and they are losing the war. Tom Cruise plays a sort of military PR guy. He's a pretty slimy, unlikable individual, which is rare for him, but is great for the movie, who is sent to the front lines after he's trying to sort of duck out of seeing any real action, where he has a fatal encounter with an alien that fuses his body with the alien's body, and the aliens have the ability to manipulate time. Essentially, what happens is he gets stuck in a time loop, repeating that last 24 hours over and over and over and over again, the day that he is sent to the front lines, the day that he dies. But he also encounters Emily Blunt's character, who is the Angel of Udon, who is the ultimate fighting warrior, and he has to keep meeting her over and over again, repeating the same day over and over again, trying to convince her that this is what happened and try and win the war, essentially. It's a really great play on the kind of time loop, Groundhog Day kind of thing, but with a kind of Starship Troopers, cyberpunk.
It's very Starship Troopers. With Groundhog Day.
Mixed with Groundhog Day. It's great. It's got a really good sense of humor. The sci-fi is really smart. Emily Blunt is brilliant.
She's amazing.
Great chemistry between the two of them.
I've had to confess to my wife, I have a bit of a crush on her, and especially in this movie.
I think that goes without saying. I think that's absolutely fine. And I think if you've got a pulse, then you've got a thing for Emily Blunt. I think that's absolutely fine. The script was actually rewritten by Christopher McQuarrie, but he didn't direct it. It's directed by Doug Liman, who did some indie movies in the 90s, but he's probably best known for doing the first Bourne movie, The Bourne Identity. He's really good at ending movies. Go and look at any Doug Liman movie, and literally the last beat of any Doug Liman movie is great. It just ends on a real like boom punch. And I'll say no more than that, but look at the end of his first movie, Swingers. Look at the end of Bourne Identity. Look at the end of this movie. This movie has a real just kind of nod, wink, ting, sort of final moment, final beat. He's so good. He's the master of ending a movie. And I think it's great. It got unfairly overlooked at the time. It came out in a period where Tom Cruise was kind of underperforming at the box office, and unfairly so. And I think people have come around to the idea that this is a great movie now, as well they should, because it's fab.
Yeah, it's definitely gotten a second life in this film. A lot of people that were unaware of it have subsequently go, oh, that's a really good movie. And I think word of mouth has definitely been its friend.
For sure, and rightly so. It's great. I'm glad it's out there. And I think, have we come to the end?
I think that's it. I think we're done. I think we've come to the end of our love fest for Tom Cruise.
Yeah, so I think that's amazing. I'm pleasantly surprised that I don't think we picked a single one the same, which just goes to show what an incredible back catalogue and filmography he has. I know we cheated and we probably picked about 12 or 13 movies, but hey, it's our rules, so we can do what we want.
That's right. That's right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Top 5, where we look at the top 5 Tom Cruise films. Obviously, because we're all excited about Top Gun 2 coming out after 35 years or whatever the gap is. Let us know what your top 5 are. Go ahead and drop something in the comment box. Let us know either where you agreed with us or what you would swap out with either one of James or my pick. And as always, if you want to follow James or I on social media, you'll find links to Twitter and Instagram in the description box below. James?
Yeah, and please subscribe, ding that bell so you never miss an episode. Check out all our other episodes. We've got new movie reviews. We've got other top 5 shows. We've got every Best Picture, where we're going through every single Best Picture Oscar winner from the beginning to the present day. And let us know in the comments what else you would like to see us do a top 5 of, or what else you'd like to hear us review.
Till next episode, bye-bye.
You're wonderful to